So we're back in our scene, and at this point, I want to really test this in VR and just kind of see what this scene is starting to feel like when I'm actually in it one to one. I'm gonna look at this character one more time. There's a lot of holes in the pixelation, so I'm just gonna up the go to my voxel effect, and I'm just gonna up the particle count just so I'm making sure that his head is filled. In theory, it would probably be much more efficient if I only applied the um, voxelation to just the head. And there's certainly ways of figuring that out, but I'm not going to focus on that. As long as I can get this to work um, without lagging too much, I'm going to be okay with it. So let's just bump it up to 5,000, and 5,000 particles isn't actually that much. And I'm just going to hope that that is going to be sufficient. And the reason is, this is more of an optimization issue, and I'm not going to focus on optimization until I really have to. So let's just make that 6,000. Whoops. And I think this is maybe filled enough. And we can really tell for sure once we're in VR, right? So there are a couple of ways. We've been using player starts, but I actually inserted a VR pawn in my scene, and the VR pawn I placed here. And all you have to do is, if you're using any specific pawn, so like for example, if you want to revise the VR pawn or create a new pawn, and you want to spawn into that, you just have to either change the game mode to work with that particular pawn, or you could just drag and drop the pawn into your scene as I've done here. You can see the VR pawn is in my scene. And then you just have to go to this setting in the details, auto possess player. It's going to come out as disabled. You just have to change it to player 0. And in Unreal, 0 is 1. So 0 would be the first player. And so if you set that and you hit play, your player will, spawn into this position, right? And so now I'm going to hit preview in VR. I'm going to take my headset and I'm going to pop it on. And I have to resume my Quest link. And so now, hopefully you can see that I'm in my scene. I can look at my character, and I can still tell that he's got a few holes in his head, which I may want to fix. But it's looking pretty good in terms of the scene itself. Um, it looks it looks sufficiently dressed to function for my purposes. And again, if I look to my right, I might fill this area up and make that white sidewalk a concrete sidewalk, um, similar to the way I did down this alleyway, and just kind of start dressing up the other sides. But my main focus, which is down this alleyway, is looking about right. And then there are a lot of different strategies I could use to block off these other views. But for the most part, I'm filling all sides, and so I'm more or less happy with that. Your projects might not need you to fill everything out. For example, you might just have things, um, or how should I phrase it? Your project might have a center of focus and everything else could be black. And I think that makes a certain amount of sense. Shoot. I think that would make a certain amount of sense because then, the player is not going to be distracted by all of these other things. And so you don't necessarily have to do what I'm doing, which is essentially creating something of a Potemkin village to, keep the player surrounded by my scene. You could certainly do something that's more centrally focused and have the rest of your scene be black. And so, um, design your scene accordingly. So one thing I'm noticing in my scene is that I'm not able to teleport properly. Let me close this up. And I tried loading a VR pawn into the scene, and that wasn't working. I'm just going to go ahead and grab a player start again, and I want to place that player start here. And with a VR scene, you want that player start to, the center of that player start to be intersecting with the ground plane that you're using, right? I really only want my collisions on my road surface and like maybe my sidewalk assets, right? Because I don't want to be able to walk anywhere else. I don't want to be able to teleport into buildings and what have you, right? But I can't teleport at all right now.